So, thank you all for joining me today. I'm Kyle Westbrook, ECE's Graduate Program Coordinator. So I'm the staff advisor for you. And today we wanted to talk a little bit more about your PhD requirements and specifically your program of study, especially because it's a little confusing to understand. So we find that having a special workshop where we can really go a lot deeper and then even talk about incorporating master's coursework and how to do that in your progression has been really helpful in the past. So as we go through today, please feel free to raise your hand. If ever I don't explain things in a way that makes sense, let me know that I'm not making sense and I'll try again. Okay, so we'll get started. Real quickly, I wanted to go through some of the slides from orientation on your requirements as a PhD student. So as you saw from the degree checklist that you have, there's a number of components that will go into your PhD program. So you have first residence, meaning that we would expect that you would be registered for at least 6 academic quarters before you graduate. Then you're also going to have the coursework that you take towards your PhD studies. After your coursework, or during your coursework, I should say, you're going to take the PhD preliminary evaluations. Those happen January of each and every year. We recommend that you take them your first year in the program. You do have one retest. If you do not have a master's already, you have 3 years in which to pass the test. If you are coming in with a master's degree, you have 2 years in which to pass the test, still with only one retest. So that's where taking the exams as early as possible, make sure that you meet that deadline and that you could still retest and meet the deadline if you already had a master's degree. Once you're done with your coursework and your research proposal is in a place where you're ready, you'll take your qualifying exam. At that time, if you don't already have a master's degree, you can talk with your major professor about reporting a master's with your qualifying exam. And then you're going to do what's called advancing to candidacy. That's the way that we certify that you've met your coursework requirement and that you've passed your qualifying exam and that you are in the research phase of your program where you're working on your dissertation. And then last but not least, once you're done, you will have an exit seminar and file your dissertation. So that's sort of the major overview of all of your requirements and the progression that you'll go through. There's a few things that I did want to stop and highlight real quickly. Is how to find the degree requirements on our webpage. So when you go to ECE's homepage and you click on the Academics tab, this is going to take you to our courses landing page. Each and every quarter this has course announcements, course lists and descriptions. Similarly, the variable unit classes, so special topics series, the 289 series, 290C, which is your advising and group meeting units, and your research units, which is 299, are all linked here to this webpage. Basically, every single faculty member has a section of advising units and research units for every graduate program that they belong to. So that's too much information for the registration system to be able to search. So instead, those classes, you need to have the specific CRN for your faculty member when you go into the registration system each quarter. So we post those to our webpage. You're going to find the CRN of your major professor, go into the registration system with that specific CRN, and then adjust the units for 299 for however many you need each and every quarter. Similarly, because our PhD students come in with a major professor, you will probably most likely be researching already. And so you're able to integrate research with your coursework each and every quarter. So what we would recommend is that you talk with your major professor about, your program design. After we meet today, I would encourage you to go and draft kind of your coursework plan. Take it as a proposal to your major professor, get some of their thoughts, so that you kind of lay out your intention for the classes that you're going to take. And then each and every quarter, you're going to be registering for both academic courses and research units up until you're done with your coursework requirement. As you know, you're required to register for 12 units each and every quarter in order to maintain full-time status, and that's for both your visa and your funding, so that's very important. And there will come a point, once you've advanced to candidacy, you're no longer going to be taking academic classes, you're going to be exclusively researching. At that point, you're going to register each and every quarter for advising and research units. So the advising and research units essentially help us give you unit credit for the time that you're spending on the research component of your degree requirements, since you're obviously having research components and coursework requirements in order to complete your PhD. So that's the courses page. When you toggle up on the left-hand side of this website, you see the graduate handbook and graduate forms and documents. Real quick on the graduate forms and documents, these are the forms that you'll use as you progress through the program. PhD checklist, so this was in your orientation packet. The PDF, is linked to this webpage. If you ever lose that handout, you can download it there. Similarly, when you go to the forms for the PhD section, the forms are listed in order of operation. So when you come to this webpage, you'll be able to link everything that you need there, as well as if you ever forget where you are and you wonder, wait, what am I doing next? You can look at the next form down. And that's also cross-referenced with the checklist. The forms are listed of what form you need, kind of what next. So those integrate very nicely. So as you could guess, you are expected to know your PhD degree requirements, to follow those, and those are going to be the expectations that you have to meet and follow in order to graduate. Those are linked here under the graduate handbook, here under degree requirements. On this graduate handbook page, we have the degree requirements page, we have a page for the preliminary exams, we link to the forms, our policies pages are here. We're going to post this video will be there so you can refer back to it. Similarly, under the student services, the appointment system is there for when you want to sign up for advising appointments. The TA application is linked here. So essentially, this is a great resource page for you. But it's very important that you do go through the PhD degree requirements page, that you read through it, that you understand your obligations and requirements. If ever you start to have questions, you can refer back to this page. It also goes through in the progression that you'll go through, so it kind of goes again in order of operation. This is the written language of what we're talking about today, or at least in part. And then one other thing I wanted to mention so that you know, so we're going to go through section 3, which is the courses requirements, is our presentation today. Section 5 is committees. This is where it actually describes the various committees that you'll have. So as you progress, each and every step that you have has a committee that goes with it. Come on in. Hi. Go ahead and grab the 2 handouts that are over here and have a seat wherever you'd like. So the relevant committee to this process is your course guidance committee. If you have questions on the rules of that committee, what they do, the purpose of the committee, that's all articulated in section 5 of the PhD degree requirements. Okay, so with that, let's hop back in over here. Okay, so the program of study is how we capture the coursework portion of your requirements. This is not going to show any of your research registration or any professional development classes that you take or anything like that. So your transcript is going to be your overall academic record that shows your research units every quarter, your registration every quarter. If you take any PE classes or professional development classes or language classes, those are all on your transcript. This program of study is the snapshot of the courses that you are going to use to fulfill the coursework portion of your degree requirements, which again is section 3 and 4 of the PhD degree requirements. So I have drawn some notes on the program of study page that you have as a handout. I'm also going to convert this into a PDF and put this on that grad handbook page so that way you can kind of refer back to this later as well. So as we dig in, one of the things that you'll notice is that we don't have very many specific requirements, meaning we don't have a set of core courses that you have to take in order to get your PhD. One of the reasons for that is that electrical and computer engineering is an incredibly broad field, and we want this program of study to be individually tailored to you and your research objectives and long-term goals. So if you were in physical electronics, it would be not particularly beneficial for you to have to take computer science classes in order to graduate. So that's why we don't have a specific set of core courses. Instead, we have requirements around categories of courses, and those two categories are your major and your minor. And that's how you're going to demonstrate what we call breadth and depth. So you'll see those words in the degree requirement section. It talks about the requirement of breadth is demonstrated by, the requirement of depth is demonstrated by. So depth is the major area. This is the subset of classes that will be your specialty. So this is the research area that you are focusing in. Breadth is the minor area. And the idea here, I mean, obviously the depth is easy to get, right? This is what you're going to specialize in. It's going to be the courses that give you the training to start researching independently. Breadth, the idea behind this is that it also gives you a broad enough course foundation that when something doesn't work the first time in the lab, because when you are researching, it usually doesn't, that you have enough tools in your toolbox to come at it from a different angle. So the idea here is that the minor area would be a distinct and separate set of coursework. It's a coherent set of coursework, so it's a category of classes that fit together, but that it complements your major area. So it helps you in the lab. It helps you be an independent expert in your field of study. So the idea with that minor is we really want it to be helpful. We're not trying to just add on another requirement that you just have to get through, kind of a thing. That's happened for some of our students in the past where they've gotten really confused about what the minor area should be, and they take a subset of classes that's in no way helpful, and then it's a huge struggle because it's not of interest, it's not helpful, and it just feels like a huge pain for 15 units. Don't do that to yourself. Find something that's going to be beneficial for you and will help you to become independent in the lab so that way you can kind of keep trying things from a different angle, because that's a huge part of being a PhD level researcher. I actually want to take you into the PhD degree requirements to, scroll up to this section for it to be in the background while we're taking a look at this, because that'll be more helpful at this point. Because I want to go back a little bit to the minor area. So specifically in this paragraph here. So again, I talked about that it should be a coherent set of classes. What this means, and this is going to be probably a very cheesy example, but there's a children's show called Sesame Street, and they're teaching kids how to group things together, and there's a song about one of these things doesn't belong here. And usually what they'll do is they'll have a screen full of different types of squares and then like one triangle, and the child is supposed to pick out which one of these things doesn't belong with the others. Basically, think of that when you're thinking of your minor. You need to have a page full of different types of squares. You can't have a triangle in there and just think like, oh, I'll sneak this in. It makes no sense. It doesn't fit with any of the others. It doesn't belong, but at least it's a class with units. Do you get what I'm saying? So it makes sense, or it should make sense, that the classes belong together. The minor area can be a subset of ECE, so it can be another field within the department, or it can be a complete field outside of the department, or it could be a set of classes that's taken from multiple different departments, but that it makes sense that they belong together. So again, that's where I use that example of you're looking for different types of squares. It does not have to all be from the same department. Yeah. The major area I want to jump back and mention very quickly is going to be your specific subfield. But this again needs to be something that's real and something that makes sense. So we want it to be specific, but not so specific that someone would look at it and say, you made that up. Like nobody else has that. So something like, it could be as broad as circuits or physical electronics. It could be as specific as, this is where I start to sound like a non-engineer. Like you can go the next level more specific than just circuits. Like you could describe like high power, fill in the next language that makes sense to you. So any questions on that before we go any further? Because I don't want to embarrass myself, really. We're posting this online, come on. Let's dig into unit totals and things like that. So as you're taking a look at this form, in the major area, you are looking to have a minimum of 30 quarter units represented here. And one of the things I forgot to draw into the page that we'll take a look at the form itself. If you're reading from left to right, it says course title, prefix, course number, school, term and year, non-UCD units, UCD units, undergrad units, grad units, and grade. So I have brackets around non-UCD units and UCD units. That's kind of one category. And then undergrad versus grad is another category. So essentially when we're looking at the form, you're going to put the number of units in one of those two columns per bracket. So if it's a non-UC Davis unit from your master's, you would put 3 units there. And then let's say it's a grad unit from your master's. So you would say 3 non-UCD units, and then you'd put 3 again in the grad column and then the grade. We'll come back to this. It'll make a little bit more sense in a second. But I explain that because of the 30 units represented in your major area, at least 21 of those 30 need to be graduate level. In the minor area, you're looking for at least 15 quarter units represented, and of those 15, at least 9 are graduate level. These are minimums, they are not maximums. So you need at least that many in order to represent competency. That could mean either that you need to take more classes than that here at UC Davis because of what you need to be prepared in your field, or it could mean that you went to a semester school for your master's, and so it converts in quite a bit more, and so you just represent more than 45 units because of how many other classes you're transferring in, or excuse me, using to satisfy the, your coursework requirements. Then down here at the bottom, we've created a box around these other requirements. These are general requirements that can be met in either the major or the minor. So overall, in your program of study, you need to have at least 24 units within an ECE department or field of ECE. At least 9 units need to be outside of ECE. Of the courses listed on your program of study, you need to have at least a 3.5 or higher, and you need to take at least 24 units here at UC Davis. So what that means is you could use 21 units or more from your master's degree to satisfy the requirements, as long as you have taken 24 units here at UC Davis. One other thing I want to sort of reiterate here that can get confusing for folks is that your minor, again, does not have to be outside of ECE. It may be a subfield of ECE, but you do have to have 9 units somewhere in your program of study that still fit with the categories of each, it still makes it coherent, that are not from the department. So that could be in your major area though. For example, anyone who is working closely on wearable devices may take quite a bit of biomedical engineering classes in their major, or even textile classes. There's a few folks who are making wearable necklaces and things, and so they've taken textiles courses in order to have the information they need to be prepared. A lot of folks who are maybe specializing in physical electronics and working with lasers have quite a number of classes from the physics department that are in their major. So again, depending on what you are specializing in, you're going to create a very individual coursework plan, and those units can be met in either the major or the minor area. If your minor is going to be physics, well, that's a pretty easy way to fill your 9 units from outside of the department, because you're probably going to take your entire minor in physics. So that kind of probably makes the point. Before I forget, I just want to mention that so if we're continuing kind of through the form, lines 1 through 3 will be signed by what's called your guidance committee. So this is referring back to when we were talking about committees earlier. You are going to impanel what we call a course selection or guidance committee in order to help you approve your coursework plan. Line number 1 is your major professor. The chair of that committee is your primary faculty advisor. That's easy. Line number 2 and 3 are people that you select to get advice from. I recommend that one person is from your major area and one person is from your minor area, so that you have eyes on your entire coursework plan. Now, for those of you who are transferring from other programs or already have master's degree, you know that in grad school, this plan is very much your intention. You have a purpose in coming to grad school of what you want to accomplish and what you want to specialize in. So this is not your major professor fills this out for you and just tells you what to do. This is you craft the coursework plan that you think best serves your interests, and then take that to your major professor to discuss and to get feedback on. Ways that I think is really helpful, or some questions that I think are really helpful to facilitate that conversation, are when you have a draft of this plan and you go to your faculty member, talk more about your long-term goals and your long-term interests, and then ask them, are there any classes you think that I should be taking that I'm not? Or if you're having a hard time deciding between 2 classes, you could say, I'm having a hard time deciding between these 2 classes. Which one do you think would be more beneficial to me? If you're having a hard time selecting a minor, you could certainly talk about what minors do you think would be most beneficial for this major. Similarly, if you go to other faculty members, because what some people do is that they really just talk with their major professor, and then they go around the hall and they find the first 2 faculty members they run into to sign the form, and then they bring it in. You could choose to do that for your coursework plan, or you could choose to use this as a way to facilitate building relationships in the department with faculty. So you could use this as entrance to an advising conversation to get to know some faculty members a little bit better, for them to know you a little bit better, so you could have a substantive conversation to build that relationship. Because remember, you have at least 2 other committees that you have to fill down the road, plus research that you're going to need advice on. So I like to look at this as a way to build a relationship with other people. I would encourage you to view that as the same. And when you go to those other faculty, same thing. Talk about your research interests. Ask them, what are they seeing out on the job market as maybe up and coming research areas? In their years of experience, what kinds of extra tools did they need? What kinds of classes do they think are most important? What faculty members should you be taking classes with because of your specific interests? Because taking classes with faculty members are another great way to start building those relationships. So, soapbox over, but that's how I would encourage you to use this form as a really beneficial way to you long term. Similarly, I would recommend drafting out your coursework plan. If you haven't done so, do that this quarter. Start those conversations now. We would like you to submit the form to us by the beginning of fall quarter of your second year. So beginning of next year, we would like to see your plan. This has to be approved by both the department faculty advisor and our graduate study committee. And if you ever change the plan, you have to submit a revision each and every time. So when you go to take your qualifying exam, when you go to apply, we have to double check that your program of study has been approved, that you meet all of the requirements, and the classes you ended up taking match what's here on this plan. So it's a good idea to kind of set out your intention on the way there, and that way you know when you're done with your classes, because it's always a bummer when you took classes you didn't need to take and then have to spend more time, and then it's like really painful. So doing that early is beneficial. Before I also forget, there are some courses you may not take to satisfy your graduate course requirement. So this list here we will post online for you. And it is listed in this paragraph here of the degree requirements. So courses that are required for the ECE undergraduate degree and or any of these other specific classes may not be used to satisfy a graduate degree. So basically any of the classes that are a required core course for the undergrads, you can't use for your graduate degree. We've actually listed those out right here. So this is based off of the current undergraduate required core courses. Because as you can see from your program of study, you are able to take upper division undergraduate courses. Upper division undergraduate courses are the 100 level classes. Lower division undergraduate courses are the 0 to 99. Those also do not count towards your GPA at all, but you could take them for professional development if you really wanted to. And then 300 level classes are professional development. Those can count towards your 12-unit registration requirement every quarter, but would not be used for your program of study. So hopefully that will be there to kind of eliminate confusion. One other thing to mention, as you'll see here in this paragraph, is the standard of scholarship. So you must have at least a B- in a class to use it on your program of study. A C+ or lower may not be used. Similarly, as we talked about, of the classes that you list on your program of study, you must have at least a 3.5 GPA. So very often you may need to get better than a B- in order to continue on or to use those classes. Let's talk quickly about using classes from your master's degree, because this is a very common question. For those of you who have master's degrees already, the word that's going to come in your mind is transferring, right? How do I transfer the coursework? What you're going to hear me say is the word use or incorporate. And I do that very specifically because for registrar's purposes, hi, come on in. Handouts are up here. Go ahead and sit wherever you'd like. As far as a registrar is concerned, to transfer is a very specific actual verb, and it means to remove courses from a transcript to another transcript. So for your master's degree, you took those courses to fulfill the requirements and graduate with that degree. If we take that off of your other transcript to move to UC Davis, you now no longer have met the requirements for your master's degree, and we do not want to invalidate your master's. So instead, what we're able to do is that we get to use those courses and incorporate those into your program of study here. So silly, you know, I know it plays with kind of careful use of language, but because if you went to the registrar's office and asked, how do I transfer classes from my coursework, they're going to tell you how to transfer the classes from your master's, not knowing that that could really mess you up. So, like we talked about before in these columns, what you're able to do is at the very top, you tell us your bachelor's school, your bachelor's major, your master's school, your master's major. For the reason why the bachelor's is important, just as a side note, is if you do not have a bachelor's in ECE or in a field of ECE, you need to complete the remedial course plan. For those of you who did a bachelor's in China, very often the name of your degree is very specific or more specific than ECE. If what we mean here is if you have a bachelor's that's like in physics or music or something like that, like it's not within the scope of ECE, that's when you need to do the remedial course plan. But if you did your bachelor's in power electronics, that's within the field of ECE, so that's equivalent to having a bachelor's in ECE. Does that make sense? Okay, perfect. So that's how we double check that in this line. Then, in these boxes here, what you're gonna do is you're gonna list the course title, the prefix as it shows on the transcript, the number as it shows on the transcript, the abbreviation of the school, the term and year of when you took it so we know how to find it, and then again whether it's a UC Davis or non, and then a grad or an undergrad. Yes?
Sorry, quick question. The prefix and the number we are putting here is according to the previous school that you're coming from.
Correct.
Not the equivalent number here.
Correct, great question. So to reframe is the course number that you write and the prefix that you write is from the transcript of your master's school. It's not the equivalent UC Davis course number, because basically we're going to use this to go through and verify in your transcripts. Another question that we have gotten recently is, are you limited to using classes that are also offered here? And the answer to that is no. So we do not have to have a UC Davis equivalent of the class in order for you to use it. So let's say you had a specialty in your master's that we don't have here at Davis, you can still use those courses, especially if it's relevant to your PhD. Did I say that in a way that made sense? Okay, perfect. As far as the number of units and the grade, if you went to a semester school, semester units are worth 1.5 times of a quarter unit because it's 1.5 times the length of our terms. So a 3-unit class here becomes a 4.5 unit semester class. So you can do that conversion to the program of study. Similarly, if you have a transcript from outside of the US that doesn't use a letter grading system, we can give you a conversion tool in order to convert that grade so that you can convert it into letter grade in order to calculate your GPA. You would just let us know if you need that. Any questions on what we've covered so far? Let's see, I want to make sure I'm covering most of the common questions that we get.
I got some sort of like obvious question. The units from the undergrad school cannot be used, right?
Correct, great question. So you're only able to incorporate units from your master's program. You cannot use classes from your bachelor's program. And similarly, any I don't know if this is as explicitly stated in UC Davis's university policy, but I'm pretty sure that if you're using a class from your master's, it should be a graduate level class. If at any point you have a class that was an undergraduate level at your master's program, but you really, really need it, we can talk about that with the graduate study committee at that point. But most of them are usually master's classes that you transfer over. So if you have a master's degree already, it's very likely that you will only be taking 24 academic units here at UC Davis. If you don't have a master's degree already, you'll most likely be taking all 45 units here at UC Davis. You don't have to have had a master's degree awarded at another school. Like if you were in another graduate program and you left before you got your master's, we can still use those classes towards your PhD here. And a couple other things that I wanted to mention about your overall registration. So as you know, you're required to be registered every quarter, 12 units. You can certainly do all research units, but we also have a really phenomenal professional development program called Grad Pathways at UC Davis. There was a handout in your orientation packet. And if you were to do a search of Office of Graduate Studies at UC Davis, and you come to their webpage, and under the Professional Development section and Grad Pathways, this is a phenomenal comprehensive program that really helps to augment your professional development, both so that you can successfully navigate graduate school, your mentoring relationship with your major professor, but also be competitive on the job market. So as you can see over here, and in these kind of icons, they have programming of everything from success and socialization, writing and publishing, presentation skills, teaching and mentoring, leadership management, scholarly integrity, career exploration, and wellness and life balance. They have a couple of different tiers of programming, so some of their workshops are just 1 hour topical workshops. They also have quarter-long classes that you can get coursework credit for, and then they sometimes also have a third tier where you can have more one-on-one coaching and counseling in that particular area. I cannot recommend these programs enough for so many reasons. Number one, it's a great way to meet other students from across campus and normalize the struggles of your graduate experience. This is hard. You are doing huge things. They don't just give PhDs away. And so it's a great way to build community and find camaraderie, especially when kind of struggles come up. Second is that your major professor really should be able to help mentor you within your specialty. Sometimes what happens, especially in the sciences, is that you come to depend on your major professor for everything. So that your major professor is your counselor, your boss, guiding your coursework, guiding your research, helping you edit your papers, teaching you how to apply for grant. You know, like that's a lot for one person to do, especially when they have more than one student. So what these programs are designed to do is to help you build a lot of these other professional skills and to help you learn how to deal with conflict and communication to better manage your advising relationship, so that way it alleviates some of the pressure and expectation on your advisor, and your relationship then can focus, that the time that you're spending in your meetings can be truly precious to talk about the substantive research issues. Because the less you're going and like I almost don't want to say vomiting all over, you know, but if you go to your advising meetings and you have questions about how to write a scientific paper or how to apply for a grant, oh, and what am I supposed to be doing for my dissertation, your time is really kind of eaten up, right? And so these programs can kind of help you become a very fine-tuned professional and give you support, so that way you only have to talk about the research and build it can be a little bit more natural and more strategic. One of the other things that might be cheesy for me to mention, but it's true, is that on the market, there are many, many, many technically skilled people. there are fewer people who have technical skills and can communicate, write well, lead, and work well in a team. And guess what companies are looking for? They're looking for the whole package. And so if you are looking to be competitive on the market, the more you take opportunities now to fine-tune your writing and presenting skills, because guess what? In order to graduate with your PhD, you have a lot of papers to write and publish, you have a lot of presentations to give. And similarly, when you go into the market, as a PhD level person, you're going to continue writing and presenting and working on teams. And also, the more you can work effectively in teams and navigate political and conflict situations, the more you are a developed leader, the more likely you are to progress in your profession, which also means more money. So the more you take time right now, I know that it's stressful and that you have a lot of expectations on your time, but this is a huge part of your professional development and will help you be more effective in your research and your lab time now. You will not regret it later. So, soapbox over again, but it's one where I think a lot of students in engineering, and especially electrical and computer engineering, miss out on these opportunities a lot. And I told the master's group earlier today, my dad is actually an engineer and he's a hiring manager. He's a operations manager for a consulting firm, and he hires our graduates quite frequently, and he's currently pursuing to hire one of our graduates. And the reason why this person really stood out, I mean, yeah, he's got the technical skills, but it's because of that X factor, because he learned how to communicate well, to work effectively in a team, and to be a leader, because there's a bunch of people with the technical skills, there's not many with those other ones. So just looking out for you guys. Okay, I've probably talked at you for a good long while now. I want to open it up again for questions. What's standing out for you guys? Yeah, so the question was, it's pretty easy to determine what should go in your major, but who certifies the minor area coursework? So the answer to that is kind of threefold. One is your guidance committee, so lines 1, 2, and 3. The other is the ECE's Graduate Study Committee. So they do review and vote on all program of study proposals. So I would start with your guidance committee, and that's why I recommend having one of the 3 members represent your minor area. One of the other reasons why is because in your qualifying exam committee, you have to have someone represent your minor area. And so again, the more you build that relationship and spend time with someone, the easier it is to ask them to serve on your qualifying exam, because it's a lot more influential for someone to be willing to serve on your exam when they know you. Because it does get uncomfortable. We have had students before where their minor is something where they didn't invest any time in getting to know any faculty in that area, and then they had to impanel someone who represented their minor area, and they're asking people that they have never met before, "Hi, you don't know me, can you serve on my exam?" They got a lot of no's before they got a yes. Yeah. Great question. So the question was, after you get the first 3 signatures of your guidance committee, what do you do at that point? After you have your guidance committee sign it, you're gonna drop this form off at the front desk of the ECE suite. We are gonna review to make sure it meets the technical requirements, and then route it to the graduate study committee for you. Once the graduate study committee has approved it, we will email you a scanned copy of the approved one. The original goes in your student file in our office, and that email is going to confirm that it's been approved and give you instructions on applying for the qualifying exam. One quick thing to note is that when your coursework does need to be complete before you take your qualifying exam, so that's where making sure that your program of study is current and approved with what you're actually taking is good, so you don't get in an emergency when you go to apply for the qualifying exam. More questions. These are great. Yeah, great question. So the question was feeling fine about fall quarter registration, but making sure, what about winter, and will it be approved? So you are certainly welcome to draft out your program of study and submit it. The Graduate Study Committee is going to be meeting monthly this quarter, and so it could be reviewed at their monthly meeting. If that made you feel more comfortable, you're certainly welcome to do that. Yeah. I would say the vast majority of programs of study that make sense are approved. So if it's coherent, you can read it and it makes sense. Like, I'll give an example. And I always pick on German. I don't know why, no offense against the German department. But as electrical and computer engineers, it doesn't really help you towards your PhD to declare German as a minor. So if you were to do that, the guidance committee would kick that back. Like, that doesn't really make sense. Similarly, I think this probably seems pretty broad, but if you had physical electronics as your major and you were doing computer science as your minor, the committee might say, is that really most beneficial to you? They might have questions about that. So, but if it's one of those things where the vast majority of the time what you're going to design is going to be because it's going to be beneficial to you, I guess, if that makes sense, of like, you're not going to pick classes that are not useful. Yeah. Other questions? Yeah.
So is this the final version of the study plan, or what if we have the classes that are not on the list?
Good question. So in the bottom of the form, you see where there's two little boxes that say original and revision. So if you submit the plan and it's routed through the Graduate Study Committee and approved, and then you end up taking a different course, you've got to go back and get the signatures again and do another revision. So that is where it can be a benefit to wait until the fall quarter of your second year to have it approved, because by then you know more of what's going to be offered next year. So there's that part of the answer. The other part of the answer is, let's say you really wanted to take German because you're being courted by a company that is in Germany, and so you think it would be really helpful to know German, but you weren't going to use it for your program of study. It's entirely reasonable that you would have the courses on your transcript, and your transcript would show German, but this is just going to list the classes going towards your PhD in ECE. Both are okay. And I've actually had that happen. I've had a student who, because you don't get charged extra for taking other classes, and so it could be a great opportunity to register for things that would help you in your personal or professional development. We also have PE classes, so it's a great way to get in some physical exercise and build in that part of your physical and emotional health with protected time. And they've got really fun classes like rock climbing and swimming, tennis, your standard PE classes. Those are only half a unit, but it can be a great way to make sure you're getting some physical exercise, because that's important, And there was something else I was going to mention. Before you advance to candidacy, you are able to take one class as satisfactory, unsatisfactory per quarter, as long as it's outside of the ECE department. If it's inside the ECE department, they won't approve the grade option change petition. But let's say you wanted to take German, you could take that as SU, so that way it doesn't affect your GPA. Once you've advanced to candidacy, you can take an unlimited number of courses per quarter as SU. So if you had either additional classes that would be helpful for your research that you discover later, or you want to keep taking German and want to add in music, you can do that. So Other questions? Yeah.
So the question I'm going to ask, you kind of like, answered it, in between the lines, but I'm going to ask it specifically. So how does this committee, or the 3 persons that are going to sign this form, how does this actually, relate with the actual PhD committee or the qualifying exam committee that we have to define there? Should they be, the same, or we can change it? And then, because you answered this one more or less, but the main question would be, how about the actual, major professor? Do we have the option of changing that later on or not?
Sorry, just to clarify, do you have the option to change the major professor, or you have the option to change the committee?
The committee would be the first question.
Okay.
And the second one would be, if we, get the signatures on this one, get the approval, get it signed, and get it done, would we be able to change the major professor later on or not?
Okay, gotcha. So first part of the question is, it relates to your PhD. This committee that you choose relates in whatever way you maximize it. So if you don't make it into something, it can either be as minimal as these are the 3 people that signed my paper, or I built relationships with these 3 people and also will use them on my other committees. So you don't have to use these people again in the future. And you do have the ability to change your major professor should you ever want or need to. And what I would say is, at that point, if you ever had questions about changing your major professor, you could come speak with me or the graduate faculty advisor, who right now is Dr. Shaker, or the graduate program chair as well.
But assuming that case, you have to redo definitely the new advisor have to be fine with the program of study you're doing for yourself.
Correct. Right. The new professor would have to be fine with the program of study. And it would also depend on where you were in your program progression. If you had already advanced to candidacy and were changing major professors, we would not, we wouldn't make you go back and start again. But you might have to take more courses if you really needed to, right? If you had not yet submitted your program of study and you needed to make changes, then you would take more courses before you even submit your program of study. Yeah. Other questions? Yeah.
Does music and PE count towards the requirement of total UCD units here?
Great question. So it will count towards your transcript total, but it will not count towards the 24 units on your program of study, right? Or so that 24 or 45 units on the program of study form is only the courses you're using to satisfy the coursework requirements for the PhD. So it will be kind of a snapshot in a sense of it'll help us zoom in on just those courses. Yeah. Yes?
One of my colleges told me that if I transfer with a master's degree before, and he told me that I cannot take more than 9 units of undergrad courses. Is that true? I would like to get it back.
So the question was, if you're transferring in and you already have a master's, you can't take more than 9 units of undergraduate courses. And to that, I would say not necessarily. That's probably going to depend on your exact situation. So,
Well,
let me do it.
The story is I use the coursework description on the website, right?
Mm-hmm.
I kind of filled out a program study and check mark for the requirement is okay. But
Right.
it's just something from my college. Just one of my friends in the lab. He told me that I cannot take more than 9 units something.
Okay.
Just
Let me
have you ever heard about that?
let me double check real quickly. This is embarrassing that I need to use my calculator, but just to be sure. So on the program of study itself, the requirements would allow for 15 units of upper division undergraduate courses as a minimum. So you could take more than that as long as you're also taking enough graduate level classes. But I guess you could potentially be limited if, no, yeah. I would say a no to that question. That would be, that person is misinformed or trying to articulate the concepts. Like, I don't, yeah. I'm trying to find a nice way to say, yeah, yeah, I think I'm trying to find a nice way to say, I have no idea what they're talking about, and I had to rewrite the degree requirements 2 years ago, so they're misinformed. This might be a good time to say, it's a good idea that what you are governed by and the requirements you have to meet are the written degree requirements. And if ever you have questions on the interpretation of those, you should be speaking with the leadership and administration of the program. So meaning the staff advisor, the graduate faculty advisor, like the official role of graduate faculty advisor, or the graduate program chair. Your lab mates can be great helps in like, what did they take, what professors did they like, but sometimes, like if someone's misinformed and then it starts a rumor, and then like that's what happened a couple of years ago. There was someone whose lab mate misunderstood the degree requirements and didn't read one of the sentences, and then was telling his other junior lab mates, oh yeah, your minor area has to be outside of ECE. Well, for folks who are in electronic circuits, depending on what you're doing, usually the most helpful minor is a subfield of ECE. So there was a whole group of people that were taking computer science. It was not related, not helpful, and really frustrating for all those people. And you had like 3 or 4 people who did that because a senior lab mate told them, and they read the degree requirements wrong and never checked with anyone. So I would say be wise about checking your sources. Lab mates are helpful, but they're not the requirement, and they don't enforce the requirement. So that probably sounds so mean, but you know.
That's true.
Yeah, exactly. Sometimes you could accidentally get led astray. So thank you all so much for coming. I'll stay around if anyone has any more personal questions that they want to keep talking about. Have a great afternoon. We're actually going to post this video to our website so you can refer back to it as you have questions or can't remember what we talked about. And good luck this quarter.